This week's parsha, we're coming up to Shoftim V'Shotrim Titin Lecha, is always read the first Shabbos of Elul. Always read the first Shabbos of Elul, and if you go throughout the parsha, there are many different topics that are discussed in the parsha. It starts off with the laws of judges, not taking bribes, tzedek tirdov, judging people with righteousness, and many other topics as well. It goes into the laws of kingship, that a king should not have many wives, many horses, etc. It also talks about Ir Miklat in the parsha. At the end it talks about war, and the Bali Musar so very beautifully want to explain the entire parsha as a remes to Elul, about the various things that a person should be careful to avoid. First of all, Shoftim V'Shotrim. Bali Musar say over here, Shoftim V'Shotrim. We learn from the plural of Shoftim V'Shotrim, it's referring to the person's eyes, it's referring to his ears, it's referring to his mouth, those things that he uses to input various data into his body. And it's coming to tell us that a person should appoint, first of all, Shoftim and Shotrim over what he sees, what he hears, what goes into his mouth, what goes out of his mouth. The Torah, at the end of the day, doesn't want to ram Judaism down our throat. It wants us to want to keep the mitzvahs out of a love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a recognition that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us this system of life in order to perfect us so we could live the most amazing lives that a human being could live. And so therefore, if we understand all those things, the Torah is telling us, first of all, Shoftim V'Shotrim, right? Make sure that you have filters on your mind, what goes into your mind, what your eyes see, what your ears hear. It tells us also not to take bribes. What does that mean, not to take bribes? I mean, don't allow the Yetzer Hara to entice you, to bribe you into thinking that what you're about to do is going to bring you so much fulfillment and so much happiness in your life, but rather no. Tzedek tirdov, judge each thing with tzidkut, with righteousness. Judge each thing. Before you act, judge whether the thing that you're about to do is going to bring you closer to Hashem or it's going to bring you farther away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Don't let the Yetzer Hara dupe you into doing things that you should know otherwise not to do. It says also as well, of course, it says you should have a king over the nation. You should also be a king over yourself. And the Torah says to the king, Lo yar b'lo susim, he shouldn't have a lot of horses, he should not have a lot of wives. Why? Because the Torah says that having a lot of wives, v'lo yosel levavo, the kesav azav lo yar b'lo mod, a person should not have too many wives, should not have too much money, because an overindulgence in physicality, whether it's in indulging in multiple relationships, whether it involves indulging in excessive gold and silver material wealth, these things, the Torah says, are going to negatively impact on our clarity of our mission at hand. The Torah is clearly telling us throughout the parsha various pitfalls, some clear pitfalls that we shouldn't test the matter and think to ourselves, we're big enough to have a lot of gold and silver. We're big enough to have. I mean, even when it comes to Shlomo HaMelech, who was the wisest king that ever lived, it says Shlomo HaMelech had 1,000 wives. So did he know about the pasuk? The Gemara says he knew about the pasuk. But what did he say? Pasuk tells me clearly, you shouldn't have a lot of wives because they will cause your heart to go astray from Hashem. And he says, I know, I'm the wisest man in the world. My name is Yedidia. Me and HaKadosh Baruch Hu are one. We're best friends. Certainly, I could rise above this. And what happened? It says that in the end, to some degree, they distracted Shlomo HaMelech. What do you see over here? You can't outsmart the Torah. The Torah tells you, these are the pitfalls. Don't think that I'm more clever than the Torah. The Torah says the average person is going to fall into this pit. I'm smart enough to not fall into the pit. The Torah says no. We have to listen to the Torah. The Torah tells us, talks about the false Navi again. How do you know that when a Navi is a false Navi? If he brings miracles, he proves that he's authentic. If he says to you, worship Avodah Zarah, you know he's false. What is the Torah? What do you see from this over here? The Torah has its red lines. There are certain red lines that you should know. If you cross them, you're no longer practicing Judaism. You might be practicing another religion. And even if the biggest tzaddik, the biggest Navi, the Jewish Navi, says to you that Hashem wants you as a one-off to worship Avodah Zarah, you should know that there's certain red lines to Yiddishkeit. You pass those lines, you've gone outside of Judaism already. There's certain lines that we cannot cross. Even if the biggest Navi tells us to cross it, certain lines we cannot cross. We have our values and they are unshakable. And then you get into, once again, the Ir Miklat. So I once heard a beautiful idea from Rabbi Leff as a beautiful talk about Elul. And he refers to the first Mishnah Berurah in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah. Well, actually, the Shulchan Aruch says Mirosh Chodesh, right? You start saying Slichos and Tachanunim from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur. Okay, Minig B'nai Ashkenaz. We get to sleep late a few more weeks. We only start Slichos a week before. This year, it's only 4 days of Slichos. What do? However, we blow the shofar. So everyone agrees that Elul is the start of the process. What's unique about Elul? So the Mishnah Berurah says that Elul is a month of Ratzon, 8th Ratzon. And we have the Mishnah Berurah brings down, this famous idea that the words Elul, Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed, the letters in the word Elul stand for something. The most famous one, of course, that we all know is Ani L'Dodi V'Dodi Li. I'm to my beloved, and my beloved is to me. The other one that he brings down is Umal Hashem Elokecha et levavcha ve'et levav zarecha. Liv et levavcha ve'et levav. So Aleph, Lamed, Vav, Lamed. Elul. That tells me that you should uncover your heart in order to remove the dross, remove the mechitza, those barriers that are on your heart that are preventing us to connect to Hashem. Remove those so you can connect to Hashem. The Arizal, the Mishnah Berurah does not bring. There are two other ones, but the one that I'd like to bring to your attention is the Arizal's. And the Arizal says, Ina liyadoi v'samti lecha. Aleph, Ina liyado lamed v'samti vav lecha lamed. Now, does anyone know what those 4 words are referring to? Ina liyadoi v'samti lecha. That pasuk appears in Shmot, I think in Mishpatim, the first time the Torah introduces the Ir Miklat. And what it says is that if a person kills Bishogeg, again, the whole Ir Miklat story is repeated in this parsha. Those words don't appear in this parsha. Ina liyadoi v'samti lecha means that if a person killed Bishogeg, it wasn't out of malice, it was an accident. So Ina liyadoi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will arrange something. He will arrange a place for the murderer to flee. So what does the word Elul, the letters of Elul, have to do with Ir Miklat? So my left said the idea is, what is an Ir Miklat? Elul is an Ir Miklat. What is an Ir Miklat? If a person kills by accident, so then there's a city of refuge to run to. What is a city of refuge? So the Ir Miklat was one of the Levite cities. That means that it was like Bnei Brak. That means that the person would have to live in a city steeped in Torah and Chesed until the Kohen Gadol would die, however long that would take. This person who committed an act of killing accidentally, now killing accidentally means negligently, which means the person was guilty of treating life trivially. And because he treated life trivially and lackadaisically, so that's what caused him to kill this person. Had he treated life more seriously, he would have been more careful, the death wouldn't have happened. So he goes to the Ir Miklat to learn to do tshuva, to learn about the seriousness of life. And Torah teaches a person the seriousness of life. That was the whole point. What does that have to do with Elul? So Rabbi Leff says, you don't have to chas v'shalom commit manslaughter, actually kill someone to be considered a murderer, a killer. It says every time we do an avera, we're killing ourselves. And we're doing it not out of malice, right? Nobody is doing an avera with full awareness that every time I do an avera, I'm killing my soul to some degree. What happens? The Yetzer Hara entices us. We do an avera. Why? Because we don't realize the seriousness of our action. We don't realize the seriousness of life. So every time a person does an avera, he's guilty of accidental manslaughter, whereby it could have been prevented, just like the manslaughter could have been prevented had he taken life more seriously. So too, if I took averas, if I took my life seriously, if I took my mitzvahs and my averas seriously, I wouldn't do averas. So every time I do an avera, it's basically the same malady that the manslaughterer has. He doesn't understand the seriousness of life. And so therefore we don't have an Ir Miklat to run to. But Elul is an Ir Miklat. Because what is Elul? Elul is 1 month where, as we said, it's Yemei Rachamim, it's Yemei Slichot. Whether you say Slichot starting from tomorrow, or was it today? Tomorrow, or whether you just blow shofar from tomorrow. But certainly the theme is that every day we have to think about the fact that life is serious. Life is not a game, and there's harba oynish, and there's accountability, and we're going to be taken to task for every aver that we do. We're going to be rewarded for every mitzvah that we do. As the Rambam says, the person, right, there's a person, how does a person come up with the imagery in his mind to realize how serious life is, realize that life is in the balance? If I do one mitzvah, I've tipped the entire world to the good side. If chas v'shalom I do one aver, I've tipped the entire world, me and the entire world, to the bad side. And so therefore, if we spend the next 30 days using Elul as an Ir Miklat, as a city of refuge, to get our priorities straight, to realize that life is serious, that Torah is serious, so then we could take all of the lessons of Shoftim, of this week's parsha, and work on those over the next 30 days, then when we get to Rosh Hashanah, we will be, as the Rambam says, what tshuva does, it makes a person into a different person. I'm a new person. I'm not the same person that I was. Elul should change me. If I use Elul properly, just like an Ir Miklat changes the manslaughterer, this person, and he's going to go out with a new appreciation of life and the seriousness of life. Hopefully we should use Elul, and we should come out of Elul different people. And when Hashem sees that we come out of Elul into Rosh Hashanah as different people, Kadosh Baruch Hu will certainly be happy to give us a ktiva, a chatima tova.